Greetings, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are delighted to have you today. I'm seeing a good number of people joining the webinar. We can give a minute. We can give a minute for additional teams to join the call. Right, so I believe we can start the call. Once again, welcome to everybody to this call. We are very delighted to have you in our third of 4 parts learning webinar series that we have organized with FCDO as an opportunity for RISA to share the key learnings and insights that we have gathered based on our work in the research and innovation ecosystem strengthening in Africa. Today, we have lined up a good conversation. As you can see, we have a great speaker lineup. We have Professor Brando Okolo, who will be giving us a keynote address from the Africa Union. He's the head of science, technology, and innovation. He'll be giving us perspectives of Africa Union's science, technology, and innovation strategy, and how that serves as a framework to support Africa as a knowledge-based economy and strengthening research and innovation. We also have Yao Braco from Impact Investing Ghana. He's a strategic partnerships manager, and he will be guiding us on conversations around how we continue unlocking opportunities for domestic financing to continue strengthening our research and innovation ecosystem. We also have Ian Korongo, the Innovation Commercialization Manager from the Kenya National Innovation Agency, and he'll be guiding us through discussions around the examples of academia, industry linkages, alliances, and research to commercialization as pathways that are providing opportunities for scale of research and innovation. And last but not least, we have Dr. Esperance Munganyika, the head of department at the Rwandan National Research Innovation Fund, and also the Rwanda National Council of Science and Technology. Thank you to everybody. Once again, welcome to the call. And before we begin, my name is Sheila Kyoko. I am the head of programs at RISA Fund, and I shall be your moderator for today. A few things as we start. We shall be engaging with each other in many ways. These learning webinar series that we have organized are an opportunity for one, RISA Fund sharing the key learnings, and also an opportunity to engage with you as ecosystem actors from across the world on what you've seen has worked, what can be done better, and what we need to prioritize as we continue strengthening our research and innovation ecosystems and strengthening partnerships around the same. Now, to keep you engaged, we have the Q&A section. You'll notice that your chat function is offline, but we can hear your thoughts and opinions through the Q&A. Please feel free to feed in your questions as we progress through the webinar, and we shall come back to them at the end to have all our speakers, each of them, depending on the discussion, for them to respond. As well, each one of you can vote for which question should be asked. So the more you vote, the more the question will become prominent for me to pick out and ask the speakers. So please post your questions and vote along. The other way we are keeping you engaged as the audience is through poll questions. For each speaker that you'll hear and throughout the session, we will present you a poll question for you just to tease your perspective on what your thoughts are, depending on the subject matter that we will be discussing. Okay, so I wonder whether our speakers are ready. I'm going to start introducing them, and we will begin with Professor Brando Okolo. he will come in to provide the keynote. And Prof. Brando, as you put on your camera, I would like to find out from you and also the audience on, we've heard a lot about the Africa Union Science, Technology, Innovation Strategy, but could you give us perspectives on how you see it, there being a tool and a framework that we can leverage on to strengthen our ecosystems?
Cheryl, thank you very much. So basically, I can start my presentation because that's the basis of the presentation.
Yes,
Let me share my screen, if you don't mind. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen, and now it's in presentation mode. Fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So first, thanks for inviting me to speak on what is happening at the continental level in terms of science, technology, and innovation, and how those activities feed into the market viability of research and innovation across our continent. The African Union has a strategic document on science, technology, and innovation. That document is about 11 years old at the moment. There's a first iteration of it. We're currently in the second decade of that initiative around science, technology, and innovation. And that second decade runs from 2025 all the way to 2034. And that's why we call it STISA 2034. STISA stands for Science, Technology, and Innovation Strategy for Africa. It's a comprehensive document, and that document derives its bearing from the Continental Agenda 2063, which is the continent's 50-year-old roadmap, or 50-year roadmap that carefully articulates where we want this continent to be by 2050. STISA 2034 derives its bearing from Aspiration 1, that deals with prosperity and sustainable development, from Aspiration 2, that deals with skills and a Pan-African Renaissance, and from Aspiration 6, that deals with people-driven development. The vision and mission of STISA is that the document envisages Africa transformation, the transformation of Africa based on innovation-driven growth. The mission is centered on leveraging science, technology, and innovation to address socioeconomic progress and prosperity in our continent. Why do we need to have a science, technology, and innovation strategy for our continent? We need to have it because it is one way we can get this continent to compete globally, but there are a few challenges, and some of those critical challenges are the slow implementation of anything, as a matter of fact, within our continent, and the inadequate funding mechanisms. The weak coordination and governance structures we have around some of our strategic documents, the insufficient research and innovation infrastructure, the persistent gender gap, especially within the scientific field, and the limited private sector engagement in R&D. I just want to say something about gender gap. Globally, you'll be very surprised, Africa accounts for the largest population of females in science, technology, and innovation globally. We have about 47% of African women involved in science, technology, and innovation. The global average is about 30%. So we are doing well in terms of female engagement within STEM, or within science, technology, and innovation. And that engagement has taken some time. When you compare what that was like in the 60s, in 1960, the continental average was about 3%. So it gives you a sense of how far we've come as a continent. But there are opportunities, and some of those opportunities are youth bulge. Yeah, people talk a lot about Africa's demographic dividend. People talk about Africa's huge market space, 1.5 billion people. It's a huge market. And when Africa, by 2050, I believe, establishes a much stronger trade relationship between both China and India, that market is going to grow to about 5.5 billion people. We talk about Africa's natural resources, the abundance of it, and the untapped nature of some of them, the growing scientific output and collaboration which we see, especially between African scientists and non-African scientists, and of course, the increasing momentum in terms of some continental initiatives. Now, there are 7 core objectives for this continental strategy. 1, we need to drive innovation and competitiveness across the continent. The value addition that comes from the implementation of the strategy, the growth in our human capital, the engagement of females and youth in what we do at the continental level, to drive science, technology, and innovation governance across the continent, to intensify private and public sector investment in science, technology, and innovation, and of course, to grow science literacy across our continent. The document is focused on 5 sectoral areas. Those are agriculture, health, ICT, energy, and climate and environment. From those sectors, we've gleaned out 6 strategic priorities or cross-cutting areas where we intend to drive this transformation. 1 is in terms of sustainable and inclusive industrialization across our continent, the human capital infrastructure and skills development in our continent, the engagement with both frontier and emerging technologies across the continent, leveraging on science diplomacy and different international partnerships to drive prosperity across the continent, encouraging the private sector to engage in science, technology, and innovation activities, and of course, youth and gender equality. The outcomes which we expect by implementing STISA 2034, developing a continent-wide innovation ecosystem, improving on our food security, developing new health systems and robust health systems that can serve our people, growing our digital infrastructure, improving on energy access, and dealing with climate challenges across the continent. Now, I want to focus on the implementation of this plan, STISA. The first iteration of STISA, which is STISA 2024, that ran from 2014 to 2024, had no implementation partner. So for the first time, we have an implementation plan for this document. The plan comes with a budget line. It has a budget of about $6.8 billion that will be spread across 10 years to execute key programs, the key initiatives we've articulated for the continent. $6.8 billion over 10 years for a continent as big as we have, in my opinion, is not ambitious enough. We can do more, and we should do more using all kinds of tools we have at our disposal. And that money, about 30% of it is going to come from the public sector, and about 67% of that would come from the private sector. The sources of those contributions and funding will come from global foundations, governmental institutions, global funds, African diaspora, African foundations, high net worth income Africans and Friends of Africa, and Africa-based funds. The implementation would be conducted across 2 phases. The first phase will deal with the advocacy work, which is part of what I'm doing even this afternoon. That is part of the advocacy work, but it would also focus on the development of new infrastructure, building new institutional capacity, strengthening existing programs, especially some of our regional networks and centers of excellence that are spread across our continent, and developing and improving on some of the flagship programs that we have. The second phase will deal with the full-scale deployment of some of these programs that were initiated in the first phase, building the continental ecosystem, making sure they come to maturity, integrating some of our initiatives and activities into the global market space, and driving sustainability across all the programs that we're running. The implementation architecture will be executed across 3 levels, at the continental level, at the regional level, and at the national level. And some of our key implementation pipelines will be through the Science Granting Council initiative. Currently, we have about 20 African countries that are part of this initiative. Typically, this would be the funding bodies for science, technology, and R&D in member states. We'll also be leveraging on pipelines through the African Academy of Sciences, the Association of African Universities, the regional economic bodies, and member states. We'll rely on them to be able to provide strategic resource distribution, to deal with quality assurance based on peer review mechanisms that they have already, on capacity building for researchers, and leveraging on the national and regional coordination and knowledge sharing, which they already have at their disposal. I just want to take about the next 4 minutes to talk about some of the key continental initiatives we intend to pursue over the next 9 years now in our continent. One, we intend to set up a light source facility for Africa. Typically, these are high energy sources where researchers, scientists would come together and do research on materials, investigate new materials, understand the makeup of materials, understand new applications for materials. We believe the continent is ready for that. We have the human capital to be able to grow and manage such a facility, and we should do that. If we're able to set up one, it will be the first fully green-powered light source existing anywhere in the world. We believe that it would open up an opportunity for scientists from all over the world to come in and do great science, share information and knowledge with our people, and get this continent to go forward. We intend to set up a manufacturing ecosystem for the continent. And the motivation for this is when you look at Africa's techno-economic pyramid, at the bottom of that pyramid, we have the backbone of our continent: welders, dressmakers, carpenters, electricians, the hand workers that drive this continent forward. In fact, in some African countries, they constitute about 90% of those engaged in manufacturing in those continents. Typically, this group, they are not captured by policy. They are referred to as the informal sector. We prefer to call them the unstructured sector. We believe that they are the key starting point to drive industrialization in our continent. If you remove that group from that pyramid, Africa would collapse. And so we should do something about bringing new efficiencies to the work that they do in driving this continent forward. Thirdly, we intend to set up a medical valley. And the motivation for this is when you look into rural areas and those living at the fringes of economy in our urban areas, the health workers working within this sector of our communities come with a lot of experiences. There'll be outbreaks of diseases, all kinds of health challenges. They're able to solve those challenges, but it's hardly ever published. It's not published either because they don't have the skill sets to publish and document, or they just don't have the time to do it. So what we plan to do is to convene this group of health workers, get them to share their experiences with us. We'll convert those experiences into a curriculum that we brought into our medical schools so that our medical schools and our medical doctors are better prepared to deal with African health challenges. And finally, we intend to set up a semiconductor cluster for this continent. And the motivation for this is because Africa is already playing a critical role in this field, but a critical role that is unseen. You will not believe that about 67% of the raw materials that goes into the global semiconductor industry comes from this continent, but yet Africa captures less than 1% of the nominal financial value of that input. That shouldn't be the case. So what we've decided to do is to understand what the full value chain of a semiconductor sector looks like, where Africa can easily play, where Africa is already playing, and consolidate ourselves around that value chain. When you look upstream we have the minerals extraction, the beneficiation of that mineral. You have the design that goes into chip designs, the verification of the design, the assembly work, the testing and the packaging work. Africa is already playing in the design space. Africa is playing in the testing space, and we can strengthen our position there and go forward. But Africa should also play in the raw materials beneficiation and the foundry work that goes into this industry, and we will get that done. Now that brings me to Africa's activities in terms of research and innovation and the market viability of that. Africa is a huge market. People under all kinds of states of discussion, they talk about Africa being the future. They talk about, things, the potentials that we find within our continent. We can do more. Within the AUD and NEPAD, we do have a report that is sent out every roughly 3 years called the African Innovation Outlook Report. The latest version is the 2024 report. That report gathers and collects information around R&D and innovation from member states. It collects that data and it publishes that data. So we provide a lot of training to those that will be doing the data collection. We provide methodologies and the tools of collection, and we build structure around what's being collected, and that information is then shared not just with all Africans, but especially with policymakers within the African continent. In terms of spending, the continental target is about 1% of GDP of member states on R&D. Currently, the continental average is about 0.4%. It is low. The global average is about 1.7% of GDP. So there's still a lot of work to be done within our continent to drive that forward. And so we need to improve on spending on research and innovation, because that spending automatically translates into economic prosperity if we can spend more. And but there are all kinds of challenges involved in within our continent in terms of spending. One of the reasons we believe is that our policymakers, those that drive decision making and spending this and decisions around spending, especially in our continent, still don't have a full appreciation of the benefits of science, technology, and innovation, and that should change. But one thing we've seen a growth in the nominal value of what's being spent, but the ratio of that to GDP of member states have remained stagnant. Over the last 15 years, we've seen an average of about 7% annual growth in countries spending on science, technology, and innovation. We've seen a growth in what is nominally spent, but not a growth in the GDP to spending ratio. Now, in terms of regional and R&D viability, what we've done is we've looked across the different African regions, and we've tried to synthesize the data we have around R&D spending, the data we have around innovation outcomes, especially the Global Innovation Index. We've synthesized that data and tried to aggregate them along a 1 to 10 scale. And what we see, of course, is that Southern Africa shows the strongest viability in terms of R&D in our continent, followed by North Africa, East Africa, West Africa, and Central Africa. There's a lot of work to be done. You can imagine. We appreciate the fact that there's disparity in terms of not just market maturity and economic maturity, but also in terms of science, technology, and innovation maturity across our different African countries. Our goal is to try to equalize that by propping up those that are lagging behind in whatever way possible we can. And so we have a plan. The plan in the short term, we need to enhance how both micro, small, and medium scale enterprises drive productivity in their businesses. This could be done through adoption of digital technologies. We know in the medium term, we need to see how we can drive more spending on R&D across our continent. We also need to start looking at what we're spending money on, both in terms of R&D and the commercial viability of what money is being spent on. One of the ways we intend to do that is to look at some of the academic programs we have and see how to bring in much stronger and forceful commercial components in those academic activities. In the long term, we need to look at really ambitious programs to drive this continent forward. One of the ones I've mentioned, the semiconductor program. Africa needs it. No single African country can pursue it by themselves. We need to do this as a collective, and we can do it and position this continent in terms of semiconductors. We talk a lot about data sovereignty and how we should guard African data or African indigenous data. In our opinion, data sovereignty starts from the chip. It starts from the chip that will be used to build those data centers, and the management and the authority to have across the data centers that have been built across our continent. So this semiconductor initiative for our continent is critical. Now, in summary, there are some critical success factors. Increased R&D investment has to be done. We have this 1% target of GDP target. If we can go beyond that, it will be good for the continent. We need to deal with reverse brain drain through competitive research environments. We need to strengthen our commercialization pathways from science to technology. We need to enhance private sector participation and venture capital. We need to grow risk capital appetite across our continent. We need to build world-class research infrastructure, and we need to see how to drive the key components of our continental free trade area programs to make sure that we fully integrate that 1.5 billion potential market size that we have. Africa is underperforming, and we can do more. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Brando, for that very informative and insightful walkthrough on Africa Union's science, technology, and innovation strategy. I definitely have learned a lot, and based on what I'm seeing on the screen, the audience is well appreciating that submission. So on your screen, we already have the first poll where we are teasing what your thoughts are. And here we're looking at what are some of the key barriers from your perspective do innovators and researchers still face in while trying to scale their solutions. Please provide us with your thoughts through the poll, and to help us build more on the concepts that have been shared by Prof. Brando. Now, Prof. Brando, thank you very much. I'll request you to step aside from the podium. And now we will invite our key speakers to give us perspectives and progress on what is happening from the regional and country level. We've heard from Prof. Brando this focus on building Africa towards a knowledge-based economy, and there's key focus on developing our infrastructure, strengthening our institutional capacity, and strengthening existing programs. We already have heard that we, as Africa, have a spend of 0.4% towards research and development. Now, allow me to welcome to the podium our speakers. We have Ian Korongo, the Innovation Commercialization Manager from the Kenya National Innovation Agency. He will be providing a discussion around institutional readiness in strengthening research to commercialization, bringing on also insights on how innovation agencies and institutions have contributed towards preparing research outputs for commercial uptake and knowledge transfer pathways. We have also Dr. Esperance Munganyika, the head of department at the Rwanda National Research Innovation Fund and the Rwanda National Council for Science and Technology. She will be talking about the progress made in national frameworks as an enabling environment for pathways to scale, addressing matters around the infrastructural development and partnership with key actors. Last but not least, we have Yao Brako from Impact Invest in Ghana. He's a strategic partnerships manager, and he will be bringing the discussion around the current issue on Africa's current underspend on R&D and what, as Impact Invest in Ghana, they have done in strengthening that figure towards a better look. Yao, welcome. You could put on your camera. And as we begin the discussion, I have the first question towards Dr. Esperance. Could you walk us through what national level infrastructure that Rwanda has undertaken towards improving research and innovation ecosystem strengthening? Any key insights that you can share with us on what Rwanda has done?
Thank you very much, Sheila. In the first place, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to share insights on the side of Rwanda. Regarding your question, I will like to highlight that Rwanda has built a strong national level infrastructure to drive research and innovation. I will try to speak into 2 points in terms of what Rwanda has established, like institutions, universities, centers of excellence, and innovation hubs, and any other national facilities that support research and innovation ecosystem. I will also try to talk about established partnerships at national level, regional level, and also at international levels. When you look in terms of public institutions, I want to highlight 2 institutions that play a key role in strengthening research and innovation through their mandates. This is the National Council for Science and Technology. This institution has the mandate to oversee the country's science, technology, and innovation agenda. Also, we have the National Industrial Research and Development Agency, which is mandated to drive Rwanda's industrial growth by fostering technology, innovation, and competitiveness. These 2 institutions actually are supporting the Rwanda's ambition to leverage the potential of science, technology, and innovation in the country, because we have the Vision 2035 to become a middle-income country, and by 2050 to become a high-income country, where the country will be knowledge-based economy. In terms of universities, allow me to emphasize that the government of Rwanda has put in place and supported known universities, which supports R&D. I may highlight Carnegie Mellon University, Africa. There is Africa Institute for Mathematical Sciences. There is University of Global Health Equity, and others. So these are the known universities that recently was established in the country with the aim to increase the research outputs and also support entrepreneurship and innovation in the country. Also, there is the University of Rwanda. This is a public university which really hosts a couple of innovation and entrepreneurship hubs. We appreciate so far what has been in terms of achievements. We have the Grid Innovation and Incubation Hub for General Tech Entrepreneurship. We have University of Rwanda Binary Hub, which deals with digital solutions. We have the Unipod, University Innovation Pod, which deals with industry technologies. And recently, the University of Rwanda launched the Rwanda Bioeconomy Hub. This is in line with fostering innovation in science, technology, and sustainable development. A part of these institutions, there are also a number of centers of excellence, as was mentioned by Professor Brand from African Union. When you look in Rwanda, you will find a number of centers of excellence established at University of Rwanda. And these are really the engine for research and innovation, whereby they link academia, government, and industry to solve national and regional challenges. I may mention there is data Center of Excellence in Data Science. We have Center of Excellence in Energy, Internet of Things, Biodiversity, Health, and others. These really focus on, are embedded actually in Rwanda's National Research and Innovation Agenda, and their role is to ensure networking region researchers and ensures Rwanda's innovation scale beyond national borders. They also focus on capacity building. They train high-skilled graduates, researchers, and entrepreneurs. And we find this like strengthening Rwanda's human capital base towards strengthening research ecosystem. There are also key innovation hubs that I want to speak on, which are on national level. There is a Kigali Innovation City. This is being developed to be a mixed use and master planned innovation city. Actually, it will be situated on 60 hectares in Kigali. And the aim of this plan is to have a Pan-African hub for digital transformation and fostering startups, academia, and corporate partnerships. We also have hangar hubs, which are established across districts in Rwanda. Currently, they are in 7 districts of Rwanda, and they are equipped with equipment and machineries for prototyping. So it enables hands-on innovation in those cities. We also have Innovate Rwanda platform. This is a web-based platform where companies in technology sector in Rwanda sign up and work together on different projects in the country. Actually, this platform serves as a national front door for startups and investors. So we expect this platform to connect Rwandan talents to opportunities, showcase hubs, and facilitate international collaboration. There is also a facility, there is no scheme East Africa. I don't know if many knows this is actually established in Rwanda. It's located in Rwanda, and it has become a cornerstone, if I may say, of Rwanda's innovation ecosystem, because Africa's largest hub for entrepreneurship, this can host over 1,500 impact-driven entrepreneurs and startups. So it provides space and world-class infrastructure, mentorship, funding opportunities, and global networks that are accelerating Rwanda's ambition to be a regional leader in research, technology, and innovation. Other national facilities I want to highlight, there is a BioNTech vaccine manufacturing facility, which was launched recently. And this is a German company, which we expect to manufacture vaccines in the country. We also recently launched a digital infrastructure, Rwanda Research and Innovation Repository, which is an online repository and is expected to enhance access and visibility of Rwandan research outputs. I think I can stop here now. Thank you, Sheila.
Yeah, and that actually helps us lead into the discussion on what the Kenya Innovation Agency has done. Ian, while you come on to the screen, what are some of the frameworks from now Kenya as a government has enabled to promote research and innovation as drivers towards economic growth? And here looking at institutional readiness and strengthening research commercialization and other frameworks around knowledge transfer pathways.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. Am I audible?
Yeah. Very audible, thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, good morning to everyone who's here. Thank you for the opportunity. Now, that's a very loaded question, and I don't think I can speak for the entire government, but maybe from Kenya's perspective, but maybe just to start, from a wider government policy perspective, in Kenya, we have the Science, Technology and Innovation Act 2012, or is it 2013? Of course, just trying to prioritize science, technology and innovation in Kenya. But also this creates 3 agencies that are key within the innovation and research and commercialization space in the country, which is Kenya, where I work, that's the National Innovation Agency. We have the National Research Fund that is supposed to fund research, and then we have the Commission for Science, Technology and Innovation that regulates research and science and innovation and technology in the country. Now, of course, for a long time, there was there was a lot of uncertainty and probably not very correct placement of innovation matters in the country. But we've seen this current government move in and even create a state department for science, research, and innovation. So this just goes, to say how the government is focused on this as a new frontier and encouraging commercialization of research in the country. Of course, there is other agencies that do several things, like the Commission for University Education, which regulates universities and provides for certain things. For example, that universities must spend a minimum of 2% of the entire budget on research and commercialization activities, research and innovation activities. So these are just some at the wider level, probably higher level national, but as Kenya, we now get into the programs. So we run a bit of programs and projects to support commercialization and building of capacities of institutions. So one that I would definitely like to highlight is our research to commercialization accelerator, where we look at researchers who have proof of concept and we onboard them into this accelerator program that runs for a couple of months. We give them coaching and mentorship, industry linkages, and the program just focuses on mindset and opportunity identification. How do you protect your IP? How do you validate your IP? How do you value your IP as a researcher? Do you even know how to register it if you haven't done it? How can you get into business in the country? What regulations are there? So we help you navigate that. Are you investor ready? Do you know how to pitch? How do you scale? What are the governance things that you need in a spin out or startup, if so to speak? So there's a number of things that we take them through, and this program has been running from 2023. It's been quite successful. In fact, just before this webinar, I saw a very good screen grab of the data, and of course, this program is very heavily supported by the FCDU through RISA. And we've been able to create over 400 jobs, direct jobs, build 30 enterprises. We have 76 positions. 76% of some of these enterprises are actually owned by women. We have, inclusivity. We also have some persons living with disabilities who have been taken through this and have been beneficiaries of this. Out of the researchers and ventures that have been taken through this program, they've been able to mobilize around 4.6 million USD in capital over those years, cumulatively. So this just goes to say how, we've seen the impact, even though it's on a very small scale, because we've only worked with around 37 institutions. But you can imagine if we did this twofold, threefold, the impact would be great. So it's a program that we're definitely keen on, growing, reaching more researchers and more institutions in the country. And within this program as well, we are building capacities as well of institutions and not just the researchers. So we also have executive programs for the leadership of institutions, because it has to start at the top. The mindset of the vice chancellors has to stop. If we look at countries that are doing well and, in the innovation and research commercialization space, academia has a very huge space and role in that. But we were lagging behind in Kenya. But what the change we're seeing now is quite encouraging. We've worked with around a total of 48 vice chancellors and deputy vice chancellors, just to train them on what it means to become an entrepreneurial institution. What structures do you need to have in place in these institutions? What policies do you need? What kind of human resource capacity do you is essential for you then to grow in this space? How do you get funding for this? The government will tell you need to do 2% funding, but does it even give you that 2% funding? So you have to be creative enough to know how to raise as an institution, and just figure out your commercialization pathways as an institution, depending on your strength and where you're placed in the country, and what partnerships you can have with industry. So it goes a long way. It's a whole 360 program, and we've seen quite some good results, Sheila. I don't know if you want me to continue, but all this is I should have started by saying this. We have a 10-year national innovation master plan that draws a lot from the STISA strategy. And we have 5 pillars on human capacity development, infrastructure, access to funding, access to markets, and policy and regulation framework. Now, of course, all our programs are pegged on this. And so even our strategic plan is pegged on this. So everything that we do has a linkage to one of these pillars. Of course, we work with other partners in the ecosystem and government, but we are really trying to bring a whole government approach to innovation, because for long it's been a standalone thing, and we keep looking at innovation as a sector on its own, but really it's an enabler. And all these programs that we're working on and the linkage between academia, government, and industry is really just to bring about and to show that, and probably also change the mindset of government, that innovation really does not exist in a vacuum. We're innovating for industry. We're innovating to create opportunities of employment, opportunities for new jobs, for new market frontiers, and all that. So we believe we're in the right direction. Of course, a number of policies and frameworks that still need to be put in place, but through our programs like this and the institutional capacity that we're building, we believe we're in the right direction, and we are seeing the change, albeit slow, but better slow than no change, Sheila. Yeah.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, those are good aspects. Now we've gotten a sense of what Rwanda has undertaken in terms of building their national level infrastructure as an enabling environment. We also heard from Kenya as a country through the Kenya National Innovation Agency on what additional frameworks have worked through, for example, the research-to-commercialization accelerator programs. And now moving into discussions around financing, because this has come up a lot. We've had it from Prof. Brando. We also had a tease of it from Dr. Esperance, and you just mentioned it, Ian. I'd like to welcome Yao and just find out what are some of those domestic financing models that have been set up. For example, the case of the Ghana ecosystem, looking at utilizing existing pools of funds, working with partners through collaboratives, and also any insights on what the Ghana National Research Innovation team has done. Yao, welcome.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you. I don't know if your camera can also come on for us to connect with you, but feel free to proceed if not.
Yes, my camera is on. It's turned on here. I don't know if it is still not showing.
Oh, it's not submitting, but continue, please.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone, and it's been a pleasure to listen in on all the discussions that have been shared so far, and very interesting contributions from all the members of the panel. So regarding indeed the gap for innovation financing or STI financing is a huge one. I was reflecting on the presentation by Prof. Ikolo earlier on, and if you look at the staggering gap in terms of what we need for capital, it's a really big one indeed. But as you mentioned, what RISA support has enabled us to be able to do in Ghana over the past years is to lay a solid foundation in terms of financing structures, in terms of vehicles that are available to be able to bridge this gap of innovation financing that we need. In fact, the first of them, some of you on the call may be aware of, is the Chigaba Fund of Funds that was set up. So Chigaba Fund of Funds is the first in many respects. So it's the first private fund of funds domiciled in West Africa. In Ghana, it's the first private fund of funds as well. And the target fund size is $75 million fund of funds that will be investing in SMEs, in innovative ventures across Africa. In fact, West Africa focus actually, with a focus on West Africa, but opportunistically across Africa. And what is unique about that from the financing angle is that it was able to employ catalytic capital. So this will be capital from the international development world, and then strategically leverage that to unlock private capital from pensions. And I think that is a key, a notable milestone, because the gap in innovation financing that we see cannot be filled with public capital alone. It cannot be filled with official development assistance and grants and all of that. And we necessarily need to be able to find innovative models like Chikaba that can attract, that can bring in, private capital, because there is such a wide pool of private capital available. In Ghana alone, I mean, pensions, we are talking about over 7 billion, the equivalent of over $7 billion plus. In Africa, it is in excess of 700 billion dollars. So that is one. Innovative financing models like the Chikaba Fund of Funds is an example, but that is meant to serve more growth stage innovative ventures. So this will be innovative ventures that are at a growth stage. For innovative ventures that are much earlier in the process, early stage finance, there is also a critical gap that exists for those that are much earlier in the process. And that is why we launched and designed the ESO pool funds, which is now the NUSE, fund, as a blended finance, facility that will adopt a similar approach, take grant funding, take catalytic capital, blend it with private capital, and then provide non-dilutive capital. So this is capital to early stage ventures and without taking an equity position. So we are looking at debt, and we are looking at revenue-based lending, etc., to be able to get them to, take innovations off the ground, provide that seed, pre-seed capital they need, and make them more investment ready to even be able to attract bigger, private follow-on investments. And we piloted this last year, where we were able to support 3 businesses. It's a pilot, one in, agribusiness, one in pharmaceuticals, one in health, give them this early stage, non-dilutive capital to be able to support operations, support working capital, product development, etc. And we are key to track and harvest the learnings that will come out of it as we continue to structure and then set up, the fully fledged, fund. We were also able to pilot returnable grants, to support very early stage innovations. One of them, a fertilizer, that has been developed, organic fertilizer. And I think the company is called Emon Joy. That was a spin-off from the University of Cape Coast, that needed some initial capital to support further product development, to support marketing, and to support further, investment appraisal, etc. And to help them scale. I mean, that early push, that initial capital is critical in getting businesses off, the ground in terms of uptake. So these are initiatives that we have piloted. In terms of others in the ecosystem, like you alluded to, there is a Ghana National Research Fund that is being operationalized and that is taking off strongly. The legislative framework was in place, but an operationalization started seriously last year. We have partnered with them closely. This is a government initiative to boost innovation financing within the ecosystem. And so capital is going to come from government. We have collaborated with them. There's a lot of great work being done by Prof. Abigail Opoku-Mensah. She and her team have participated in a training workshop that we have on taking innovation to commercialization. She was also a part of the Greek forum, etc., and also a part of the maiden edition of the Ghana IP and TTO conference, that's Intellectual Property and then Technology Transfer Organization conference that we had, where she even delivered opening remarks. So we are working closely with them to support what they do, to be able to work together, to be able to synergize our efforts to develop the innovation financing ecosystem. And that's all on the supply side. But on the demand side, we've also done significant work because the financing might be there, but you may not have innovation in the shape or form that is ready to be financed. That is the work that GRIC has focused on. GRIC is the Ghana Research and Industry Collaborative. It's worked closely to bridge the gap between academia and the industry through its work, whether it is knowledge translation to make research more understandable by the business community, or industry brief sessions, which have sort of brought together, two worlds which very often seem disconnected. So researchers on one hand, and then business and industry on the other hand. Some critical work has been done to bridge that gap, bring them together through these sessions, as well as providing advisory services to technology transfer organizations. All these things are meant to have innovations that are market relevant, because not all the innovations are relevant to the market. Not all the innovations are investment ready. Not all the innovations are commercializable, so that even with a little financing that is available, they can benefit from that. And maybe just the last bit to speak about is also intermediation. So we have financing structures like Chigaba, we have financing structures like the NUSE Fund, and returnable grants we are piloting, but we also need intermediation to be able to link the supply side that's increasing financing available to the demand side, what GRIC is doing. And we have been able to do that quite well through the program called Deal Source Africa. That is all about bridging that gap. It's about intermediation. How do you bring investment together with innovation opportunities, entrepreneurs who are busy churning out prototypes and innovative ventures? How do you connect the two? What Deal Source has done is to be able to connect as many innovative ventures as possible to transaction advisors who will help them to become investment ready, who will help them to meet the requirements of investors, and investors as well. And we are delighted that over the years of RISA support, we've been able to facilitate over $2 million that have been raised for innovative ventures across, this will be clean tech, across agribusiness, across edutech, across mobility and transport and logistics, etc. All in an effort to be able to create jobs, to be able to create impacts for a better society. So thank you.
Thank you, Yao. It was great listening to the innovative financing opportunities that have been set up in Ghana, looking at also tapping into pension funds. Pension funds tend to be a very sensitive matter. I can imagine it wasn't an easy go for Ghana, and reeling in the private sector through this Chigaba Fund of Funds as a way of partners and ecosystem actors coming together, the non-conventional actors. Now, while talking about private sector, Dr. Esperance, I come back to you. Drawing examples from what has worked, for example, in Rwanda, in working with all ecosystem actors, what has worked from your sense, and what has been sustainable in terms of the partnerships established to support research innovation?
Thank you very much, Sheila. When it comes to academia industry collaboration, I want to highlight that there is an investment that the government of Rwanda has put in place. This is actually in line with the strategic investments to ensure that research and technological innovation is playing a key role in the achievement of the national development goals. This is the National Research and Innovation Fund, which is managed by the National Council for Science and Technology, where I'm working. And this instrument was put in place in 2018 to provide support to Rwandan researchers and innovators. This was done actually to ensure we mobilize local resources and reduce reliance on external support. I can highlight that more than 126 projects have been funded, and over 8 billion Rwandan francs have been invested in with 80% from the government of Rwanda and 20% from partners. So this is brings me to speak about partnerships because we really believe that partnership, collaboration, and coordination is very key when it comes to strengthen research and innovation ecosystem. It has to be different players or actors in this ecosystem. So this requires partnerships at national level, regional level, and as well as at international level. So when we started these funding instruments, we also think there is a need to bridge gaps between academia and industry. So we supported projects. So the experience we have is that when we started, there was a challenge of bringing on board the private sector. I remember also Professor Brando says the engagement of private sector is somehow still low on the African continent. It's the same also in Rwanda, but we are putting in place we are looking for efforts. How can we increase the involvement of private sector in research and development activities? So one of the strategy that we've took is to support researchers and challenge them, if I may say. So we provided some facilitation to researchers and tell them go and work at the industry. So we'll pay you your time, effort at industry, collaborate with industry, make sure their needs are addressed. So we want to align academic solutions with private needs or market needs. So that's why we emphasize that time at industry premises, and we pay that that time effort, and we have seen some improvement in terms of increasing collaboration between academia and industry. Second, what we did recently through support from RISA fund, FCDO, actually we are able to launch some strategies in terms of technology transfer and commercialization. This is a national strategy which was cascaded to institutional levels last year. So this strategy is expected also to support commercialization and engagement of private sector. Through these documents, through different support, we've started to engage private sector through meetings or roundtable, if I may say, roundtable meetings. Like last year, we have a big meeting with private sector clusters, because in Rwanda we have a private sector federation, which is a well-structured, if I may say, a private sector federation is in place. It has research centers, which we appreciate. So we invited them and had discussions with them. How should they be involved in commercialization of research outputs? So we want to maintain those platforms and have like a key contact person which can lead those conversations. So the outcome of those conversations was to start involving researchers in private sector exhibitions. That's what came up from those discussions, but also how we can launch some specific grant schemes that really focus on private sector needs. So we plan to launch a part of those grants on academia industry collaboration, but we want to start also engaging private at initial stage and ensure their needs are worked on during the research that researchers can do. So I may stop here now. Lastly, we also developed a document which is entrepreneurial institutional maturity framework. This was also through support of FCDO, and we want to use this document to start mapping entrepreneurship levels across different institutions in Rwanda. And we expect this document to allow us to rank, not only to know this is the first or the last, but also which support is really needed for specific institutions and ensure that entrepreneurship grows in Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Esperance. Great to hear about the roundtable engagement with private sector for us to begin understanding how and connecting with them better on how they can be better involved. And that begins by understanding what exactly are their needs and how can we shape those needs to be addressed by understanding what the industry exactly wants. And this also ties to the discussion Prof. Brando spoke about, having a science-led transformation of any ecosystem, understanding the industry better. Now, coming back to Ian and the last question to this panel conversation. Ian, a lot has been done. We appreciate what has happened at the continental level through the AU STI strategy, what is happening at the regional level, as we've heard from Kenya, Ghana, Rwanda. Now, what more can be done to support the scaling of research commercialization, seeing and leading Africa towards the knowledge-based economy that we're talking about? And please, audience, as Ian comes in, we have been sharing the poll questions. We are very excited with the responses we are receiving. All these will continue shaping the design and implementation of RNI in our continent. So Ian, welcome.
Yeah, so for me, maybe 2 or 3 things. One, policy. I think we develop policy, I don't know for I don't know for the purposes of what, but policy really needs to be developed in a way that it can be implemented. And with this, I'm talking about things to do with incentivizing our researchers for commercialization. So I'm talking about things to do with finance, policies, incentives by governments, tax incentives, even to allow companies to set up and what have you. But an example is really just, we have this 2% thing in our ST&I Act. The UN is at 1%. Kenya is still at around 0.8%. But what are we doing about it? We say that 2% of our GDP should go to research, innovations, technology, and all that, and commercialization. But what are we doing about it? When we say the same percentages go to roads and infrastructure, we go further and have deliberate actions and introduce levies like petrol levy, railway levy, whatever. Levies where these monies are collected for building these roads or connecting electricity and what have you. When we say 2% of it goes to R&D, there is no money that is ring-fenced to go into that, that percentage as such. And there are many creative ways of doing that. There's so many levies that are paid by researchers, that are paid by companies setting up here. It's endless. The options are many. But so as governments, we just need to go a step further and try and ring-fence funding for research and for technology and innovation. But key is when we design policies, let us design policies that we can actually implement and that are followed through with regulations. This thing on academia and industry linkages. I mean, I'm happy what the Dr. Esperance is saying, what Rwanda is doing, and Kenya is trying to do something. But really, what is the reason why does academia not look attractive to industry? There's so many things. There's culture, there's the speed, there's bureaucracy, there's a lot. But private sector basically does not need academia. They have all the money they have to do whatever they want, to develop new products, to do their research on their own. But why is it that then what makes the academia attractive? So academia also needs to rethink and reposition themselves. And we're doing a lot of this in Kenya, just trainings on changing the mindset and ways in which academia can actually incentivize industry and put themselves out there. If you're a university that is strong in, agri something, in an area for sugarcane development, why don't you walk to the sugar processing factory and say, this is what we're doing, and this is what we can do for you, what are your needs? So this is also the space that we're trying to get into now as Kenya, just encourage this industry and academia linkages. But again, government has a huge role in playing in this, in incentivizing the private sector and the industry to work with academia, because it needs to make sense for industry as well financially for them to engage academia. So I think from Kenya's perspective, two issues, two or three, because one is policy and finance in it, but also linkages between academia and industry is really big for us, and we think this would sort of crack this. The problem that we have with commercialization of research in the continent and in Africa. Of course, open up our borders. We have AFC, FTA. Are we really using it? Are we enabling our innovators from, say, Namibia come to set up in Kenya? Is it possible for Kenyans to go set up in Rwanda easily and work on joint research projects, joint commercialization projects? Let's also open up our borders beyond the paperwork and the policies that have been put in place. Let's action them, and let's encourage that within the continent. I think I submit, Sheila.
Thank you, Ian. I wouldn't have summarized it any better. And the thought-provocative points that you have brought up are quite interesting. Starting with having policy that is working, not just policy that is in guiding, but policy that works, and looking at how we better entice private sector and academia to continue, investing and programming around research and innovation, things like tax alleviation and kickbacks. So now that marks the end of our panel discussion. And as all the speakers, including Professor Brando, come onto the screen, I've seen we have some questions that have been coming from the floor. I'll ask the production team to spotlight all the speakers. And I see we've been voting. That's nice. So let me start with the first one. Let me try see if I can summarize. It's pretty long. Okay, here we go. So what do you think are strategies that Africa can take to eradicate the situation among our youth so that research is enhanced? And here we are looking at how we can better involve and engage the young generation. So Prof. Brando, I'll direct that question to you on what strategies as Africa we can take to engage our youth better. And the next question we have is African countries have had science technology research councils and units for a long time. What has been the reason for their lack of impact? Why does the continent lack in policies and processes that would facilitate better performance and output in R&I? I'll have it again. African countries have had science technology research councils for the longest. What has been the reason for their lack of impact? Why does a continent lack in policies and processes that would facilitate better performance and output in R&I? Right, so Prof. Brando, does this seem like
yeah, thank you very much. Thanks. I'll quickly take the first question. In terms of youth engagement in research and academic work and innovation, my thoughts around that friction is we need to start thinking in terms of an apprenticeship program for our youths. Because at the end of the day, what Africa needs is creators. It needs makers. This is what really Africa needs. I'm not against those that are involved in discovery work and very deep research, but right now, Africa needs products and services that could be scaled across this continent. And you need people who understand the market space. And there are people who do, and we need to get both graduates and those that are not graduates to go there and do apprenticeship work, not internship. There's a difference between both of those. Apprenticeship work. Apprenticeship work is critical to be able to drive this continent forward. And it is, in my opinion, a program which the youth could easily buy into because they actually see their skills improve and they see the translation of those skills into commercial value. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Prof. Brando. The next question we have here is the next question we had was science technology research councils have been there for a long time. What could be the reason that they're still lacking impact and what can be done?
Well, I have to say that it's a bit inappropriate to say that they've been there for a long time and there's not been any impact. In my presentation, I did say that at the turn of the 60s, when most African countries had their independence, we only had about 3% of females involved in STEM, in the STEM field, in our universities across the continent. Today, we have about 47% females in that sector. There's been progress and we shouldn't take that for granted. I have to say this. Probably one of the key challenges we have is coordination, because when you look into member states and essentially look into the landscape around science, technology, innovation, R&D, there are lots of agencies. Some of them are duplicating their roles. The coordination work of it is important. Once you coordinate well, you begin to see an increase in efficiency and impact. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Prof. Brando. The next question we have here is, if the ultimate goal is economic transformation, think about jobs and productivity, how should we rethink how success is measured in research and innovation programs? And what indicators should matter most to decision makers going forward? I'll repeat the question. If the ultimate goal is economic transformation, looking at jobs and productivity, how should we rethink how success is measured in research and innovation programs? And what indicators should matter most to decision makers going forward? I'd like to pose that question to Ian.
Why me, Sheila? Anyway. I don't know, like I said, and I think whoever typed in that question is, thinking along the same lines. Like when I started, I said it's really not in a vacuum, and it's innovation or commercialization is for industrialization, is for economic transformation. But our decision makers, and probably I'll speak on for Kenya. We have a 5-year election cycle, and decisions are made by the politicians, because politicians make up the larger part of government, and so they drive the agenda. Now, for you to have your agenda and for us to have our agenda, science, research, innovation, commercialization, all this, move forward and sort of align with economic transformation and productivity and jobs, we have to speak in a language that our decision makers would relate to. Because to them, they need to know, what am I going to tell my electorate? In fact, it's not even 5 years, it's 3 years down the line, I start campaigning again. So whatever we sell them as, we need to look at commercialization or innovation as an enabler or as a tool to create new industries, to create new jobs. So what are we measuring? So we need to stop measuring the number of papers that are published, stop measuring the number of women, stop measuring the number of dollars you've gotten, but let's start measuring how many jobs have come out of this and how many jobs can we trace directly to one innovation and downstream to the whole value chain. How much money have they paid out in taxes, for instance, because this is what the government would love to see. I mean, I would support you more if you're giving me more, or if I see more value from you. How many businesses have set up here? How many, Probably external companies. Have we brought, how many Kenyan companies that are, research-based or innovators have we sent outside instead of just sending our people to go work in the Middle East? So these are the sort of the metrics now that we can start looking at, and maybe we need to learn how to tell our story to our policy makers and our decision makers, and maybe put aside the numbers and all the jargon and all the technical, and just come up with real metrics that speak and that can be seen, because for politicians, it has to be seen, because that's all they're going to sell to their constituents. So I think from a Kenyan perspective and from my own thinking, Sheila, maybe that's the way to go.
All right, thank you, Ian. I can see we have a hand up. I'll encourage if you have a question, please pose it in the Q&A section, and we will be able to pick it out. All right, the next question we have is, and this is towards Dr. Esperance. Many research innovation initiatives demonstrate strong pilots, but really struggle to scale. From your perspective, what are the bottlenecks, the policy bottlenecks that prevent promising research translating into sustainable economic value?
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. I agree with the question that we have many research may be funded, but when it comes to maybe those research came up with proof of concepts, or they have prototypes, but when it comes to scale and commercialize, you will find that few of those researches will be commercialized. So, as my colleague Ian was mentioning, I think we need to change our minds and our strategies to ensure that now we focus on metrics. So not look into the numbers of funded project, but look on how many so when it comes to policy makers or decision makers, maybe what we need to do as researchers maybe if I may say on our side of funders, what we need to do to convince maybe policymakers or to ensure that they understand there is a need to support commercialization. I see it into 2 points. Actually, we need to be involved in development of these policies. So we need to cooperate with policymakers. We need to know how we can market our solutions, our innovations. We need to know how to communicate, as Ian was saying. So you will find, actually in Rwanda, you will find a research has a good innovation, for instance. But when we invite policymakers in the room and we want them to showcase or to pitch, you will find that she will fail to communicate the real solution. So I think now what we are doing at National Council for Science and Technology in Rwanda, we are trying to train our researchers in terms of pitching, in terms of understanding commercialization, because we find they don't understand how to make business models. She or he has a good project, but when you ask him the profit from this solution, she or he will not really be able to explain the profit from the project. So in brief, we need to start looking on our side what we can improve to ensure that when we meet these policymakers, they really understand our solutions. Need how we communicate to them. We need to have capacities in terms of knowledge in commercialization, in entrepreneurship, In technology transfer, as Ian was mentioning, we will find many technology in universities, in papers, publications. So how can we translate those researches into marketable or tangible solutions on the market? So there is a need to start changing our mindset of us in terms of understanding how you can market your research, how you can make business models, how you can go and have the IP. We have challenges of researchers who don't really understand how to make a profile for asking the IP. So in brief, capacity building is key, is very, very key. And we've started to train our researchers in entrepreneurship, in commercialization, and in IP. Another thing, because I said two, secondary, to convince policies, we have to align our research with the needs on the market. You will find someone is doing research, but when you look, you will find it doesn't address any challenge. So we need to align the research we do with the needs on the market. So that's what I can say.
Thank you, Dr. Esperance. Now, the final question is to Yao, and in 1 minute or less, Yao, how can you de-risk public funds to secure domestic financing as a mechanism for sustainable capital?
Yes, thank you very much, Sheila. So in 1 minute, yeah. So very often public funds, funding from development agencies, foundations, etc., comes as what they call first capital, or various forms. It's just one form of catalytic capital. That says that in the event of a loss, this will be the capital that will first absorb this loss. And that gives assurance to private capital that is coming in, with market rate returns, etc. It gives that confidence to private investors to be able to chip in their bit. I mean, there are other forms of catalytic capital, but then this is one of the major forms in which public funding or development funding can be structured as first loss. Sometimes it's also about a tenor. It comes in as more patient capital. Yeah, but generally comes as capital that is willing to assume a higher risk, very often as first loss, capital.
All right, thank you, Yao. Thank you also to all the speakers. As they get off the podium, we have reached the end of our third learning webinar series, which has been themed around pathways of scale and how we can bridge research innovation towards economic growth. We've had a lot. We began with a conversation from Africa Union on the strategy, and key things that came out were the Africa Union as a supporting body is looking at building a knowledge-based economy with all the countries and looking at areas of infrastructure development, institution capacity building, strengthening existing programs, and strengthening partnerships. We also got a sense from Kenya through the Kenyan National Innovation Agency with the works around the research commercialization program, and also from Rwanda, the infrastructure setup, for example, the Kigali Innovation City as a Pan-African hub for research and innovation. From Impact Invest in Ghana through Yao, we got a sense of what the country has been doing around building domestic funding opportunities. Now, as we wrap up, we would also like to invite you all to our last webinar series, which will be taking place in February. And last but not least, we will dive into the conversation around how do we design and implement towards inclusive research and innovation programming as an enabler towards strengthening research and innovation ecosystems. It has been a delight being your moderator today. My name is Sheila Kyoko, and I'm the head of programs at the Research and Innovation Systems for Africa Fund under the Foreign Commonwealth Development Organization. Thank you very much. Do have a lovely day as it begins and winds, depending on where you've dialed in from. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.